Okay, karibuni tena. So file system navigation and management. So how in VRP can we be able to do things like creating a file, deleting a file, copying a file, moving a file, editing or modifying a file, all those kind of file operations that we are able to do in any other operating system. So how can we do them in VRP? That is what we're going to learn in this particular topic. So the file system represents the underlying platform. The file system presents the underlying platform on which VRP operates, and where system files are stored on a physical storage devices of the product. And so the switch or the router will usually have a physical storage device. So the capability to navigate and manage this file system is necessary to ensure effective management of the configuration files, VRP software, upgrade, and ensure that the physical device contained within each product are well maintained. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to, number one, is Chris here? George? Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Successfully navigate the system device file system, manipulate the file system files and folders,
Yes.
manage Huawei router and switch storage devices.
Exactly. Thank you very much. So let's do this. Okay, so any computer will usually have a storage device. So no computer will exist without having a storage device. The reason being, the system software itself and every other application software will have what we call files, and most of these files will be organized in what we call directories, what we commonly refer to as folders. So these files and folders or directories are actually stored in the storage device. Now, there are certain operations that you might do to your file or your folder. For example, you might want to create a file or a folder. You might want to do the opposite, which is delete. You might want to modify, which is edit. You might want to rename a file or a folder. Other operations include displaying the content of the file or directory, and so on and so forth. You might want to move it. You might want to copy. You might want to do what we call and delete. That is recovering it from the recycle bin and so on and so forth. So generally, in this particular chapter, we are supposed to understand how in VRP we can be able to do all these things. How do we do all these things in VRP? So that is what this chapter is about. Now, let's look at the two main functions that the file system is responsible for. Number one is managing the storage devices. Number two is managing files that are stored. So managing files that are stored on those devices. So these are the two things that that the file system can help us do. So managing storage devices by looking at the space that is remaining, by deleting files that we no longer need, and so on and so forth, in order to create more spaces. Manage files that are stored on the device, we can move them, we can create new files, all these operations that I've just listed here. Okay, so let's look now into this. So for example, in CLI, you can use the command cd to change the directory. So changing the directory is simply moving from one directory to the next directory. When you want to view the current directory, you use the command pwd. These commands are very similar to the commands that are used for Windows. If you've used the Windows command prompt, they use a similar command structure. So if you want to display the contents of a folder, you can use the dir command. If you want to display the contents of a file, you can use the more command. So in this particular example, we are on the system view, and it should be good to note, as you're going to see with all the other file system commands, that most file system commands are actually done on the user view. They are done on the user view. So in this particular case, we are using the dir command in order to display the contents of the directory called the flash, which is actually the default storage location for Huawei devices. So once we do that, we can see a number of things. So one of them is just the ID or the index of that particular folder or file. The other one is the attribute. You must understand each of these attributes. So those attributes, we can have a D. When you have a D, it means that that is a directory. If you have R, it means you have read, writes. When you have W, it means you have writes. Then you can also have, I think, X for execute. If it's a software, execute writes. If it's a software that, for example, you can install, it's a software file that you can install, you can execute it, X. So you can have one of those on the attributes. So in this particular example, this particular first file here is actually not a file but a directory. How do we know that? The very first attribute here is a D. So how do we know these others are not directories? They have a dash at that particular attribute position. So R, as I've said, used for read writes, meaning we can be able to open this particular file. Write, we can be able to modify this particular file. Then the last one, we also have a dash in all of them because we don't have an executable software file here. So the other thing you're going to get when you use dir is the size of that particular file. Also important to note that you cannot get the size of the folder or the directory, but for individual files, you'll be able to get the size. You'll get the date and time of when that file maybe was last modified. You'll also get the file name together with the extension. So the other way to recognize a directory will not have an extension, but a file will have an extension. So for example, this one is private data.txt. This one is a .cfg file. Another information that we are able to get from here is, for example, the total size of this particular flash memory and what is remaining. So we can see it's actually not very big. Total size about 32,000 kilobytes. And we've only used just a few, less than a few hundreds kilobytes. So any question there? Are we good to proceed to the next one? Okay. So let's look at the manipulation of the file system. So you use the command make directory mkdir to create a folder or directory, rmdir to delete it. So in this example, again on the user view, we run the command mkdir, then the name of that particular directory that we want to create. And now, if we go ahead and do the dir command, we should be able to see the directory that we've just created with the name test. So D for directory. The other thing, it does not have an extension, so it's a directory. So that's how we do it. The name, again, the name of this particular directory can be a string of 1 to 64 characters. So it cannot be longer than 64 characters. Now, once you delete using the rmdir command, once you delete, the file is actually taken to what we call the recycle bin. And therefore, you can always use the command and delete to return it, as we are going to see in a short while. Other things you can do to a file is to copy the file using the command copy, move the file to a different location using the move command, and you can also rename the file. The file we just created, we want to rename it from its original name test to the name Huawei. And therefore, if we do dir, we're going to see that now the name has changed to Huawei. So the delete command, is used to delete a file. When you use the delete command together with the unreserved command, it will be deleted without going to the recycle bin. So this particular example uses the unreserved option. So delete space forward slash unreserved. Then the location of that particular file together with the name of that file. So wzbk1.cfg. So once we do that, when we do dir, we can no longer see that file. It was our second last file, but now we don't have it. We only have the one we created previously and the one that was above it, the .txt file. So when you don't want to delete it permanently, don't use the unreserved. Just use delete, then the location of the file and the name of the file. And it will go to the recycle bin. Once it goes to the recycle bin, you can always recover it by typing and delete, then the name of the file, and it will be restored to its original location. If you want to create more space in your flash memory, you use the reset recycle bin command. This will delete everything that has been saved in the recycle bin. So just like emptying the recycle bin in Windows. Then we have these two that you have to understand. So let me go back to storage again in computers. So we have what we call the primary memory. Yes, Joshua, go ahead. Joshua, you lifted up your hand? Okay, so we move on. So we have the primary memory and the secondary memory. Now, primary memory is what we call volatile. Volatile memory. Volatile mean loses data. Loses data. Joshua, are you trying to raise up your hand? I can actually see that you've raised up your hand. Do you have an issue?
Are you able to get me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm asking, is the flash memory inbuilt to the device?
Yes.
And are there other storage types zenye ziko built in pia ama ni hiyo flash memory tu?
I think we have the RAM and the flash memory. The RAM and the flash memory, but there are other storage devices that you can use. We are going to look into them right now.
Oh, ni sawa.
Sawa sawa. Okay, so the storage devices in a computer, we have what we call the primary memory and secondary memory. Difference being, one is volatile and one is non-volatile. Volatile means when you lose power, that data that has been stored in that memory is lost. So with primary memory, we normally use to store temporary data in the primary memory. And most of the time, we use what we call the random access memory as the primary memory, RAM. Then secondary memory is non-volatile, permanently stores data, hata stima ikipotea, it's still able to maintain the data that has been stored there. Now this permanent memory in Huawei devices is called flash. It's called flash. This name can be confusing because sometimes the RAM is also referred to, I think, as the flash memory. But in Huawei devices, the permanent memory is known as the flash memory. In most of our computers, we call this hard drive. So your computer will come with a hard drive. Hard drive. So flash memory is used for that particular purpose. Now, when you start your device, the operating system is normally loaded from the secondary memory to the RAM. And when you open any other application, it will be loaded to the random access memory. Reason being, from the RAM is faster in terms of accessing the contents that are in it compared to accessing the content from the secondary memory. So the CPU normally accesses content from the RAM, from the random access memory, in order to improve the processing speeds. So flash memory, primary memory is actually faster compared to the secondary memory in terms of access, and the CPU will access everything from here. So any software that runs has to be loaded into RAM. Okay, so from that point, you need to understand what we call the saved configuration file and the current configuration file. So configuration file will carry the settings that you've configured for your device. So that file will usually be stored in the flash memory, and when you start your device, it's gonna be loaded into the RAM of your device, random access memory. Now, when you alter or change some of the parameters in your configuration file, you can use the save command to save it. When you save it, then it will be permanently be stored in the flash memory. So I hope you've understood that cycle. So the current configuration is loaded from the saved configuration in system flash memory at system startup. So if you make changes to the current configuration file and you don't save it, if you lose power, then you lose everything that you had done. So you must save it for it to be used at the next startup in case of reboot or power loss. So we have these two commands that can be used to check or display the current configuration. So you can always use this command, display current configuration and display saved configuration, to view the content of each of those files. So once you type on user view, display current configuration, you'll get all the contents of the current configuration file. If you do that, you get all the contents of the saved configuration file. So this is the other important command. It's called the save command. Anytime we do a lab and maybe you are unable to complete it at a particular point, make sure you use the save command to save every configuration that you've done so far. If you close ENSP without using the save command on each of your devices, you will lose all the configurations that you might have done up to that far. So it's the save command. The save command is executed on the user interface, or the user view, sorry, on the user view. So save. So when you do that, it's going to ask you, do you really want to do it? Then you enter Y for yes. Then you press enter. So always make sure you use the save command if you want to get the configs that you had done the next time you open up that particular topo. When you use the save command, this particular current configuration file, of course, will be saved on the default storage path of the system. Most of the time, it's just the flash memory. Sorry, what did I do? Where was I? Okay, save, then display startup. Okay. Display startup command used to view the current startup parameters. What are some of the startup parameters that you can get? You can get the system software, VRP actually, software that is being run and where it is. So configured startup system software is that one, and also what was used during startup is that one and is on that location. So the location and the name of the file. You can also get things like the next saved configuration file, startup saved configuration file, where it is and its name, and also the next startup saved configuration file. So you can also configure a different file to be used during the next startup, as we are going to see in a short while. So other information you can see here, for example, are the license files that you've configured to be used, patch files for updating, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, whenever you want to change the configuration file that should run on the next startup, you use the command startup saved configuration, then the location and the name of the file that you want to be run during the next startup. So now, if we use the command display startup, we should be able to see that in the next startup, In the next startup, this file will run. Currently, we are running on this file, this configuration file. But maybe this file called Huawei.zip, we've just configured it on ENSP, and that is how we want our router or switch to run. So we simply copy that file from ENSP to a flash disk, then upload it to our router. Or we can also pull it through an FTP server and upload it to our router remotely like that, as we are going to learn much later. So that command is used for that purpose. Then we have compare configuration. Compare configuration command is used to compare the current and the startup, the current configuration and the startup configuration files line by line. So it will display any differences between the configured parameters. So that is what compare configuration is used to do. The system will perform a line-by-line comparison of the saved configuration with the current configuration, starting from the very first line. Okay. Then we have reset saved configuration. Reset saved configuration. Erase saved configuration file is used to erase the saved configuration file. So whenever you want to delete the device startup configuration file from the storage device, you use this command. I'm going to ask you, do you really want to do it? You choose yes, then it will be deleted. So once you delete it, the default configuration file will be used when the router or switch is started the next time. So for example, we delete yenye tumeset hapa, hii Huawei. So once you delete it, then the default one, which is this one, vrp-cfg.zip, will be loaded during the next startup. So these are some of the storage types that can be used by our routers and switches. So flash, then we have the SDRAM and the NVRAM. So the devices will come with this. Then most devices nowadays, like the AR routers, will come with an SD interface or port, and also USB interface that you can use to plug in a USB stick or an SD card in order to transfer files. If you want to see the different storage types that are currently on your device, you use the command display version. So here we can see that you have this DRAM, the flash, and the NVRAM. Display version command is important because it also tells you the size of that particular storage device. So kama tungekuwa pia tumeplug in ka flash disk, it could have also appeared in this particular list. So I hope that is clear. So a format command. So format, then a particular storage device. Format, then for example, you've connected a flash disk. So it's going to be given a name like SD1. So format is used to erase everything in your storage device. Again, care should be taken when using the format command, as all data will be lost and it cannot be able to be recovered. The other one is fixed disk. Yes, or you have a question? Oyo, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm asking.
Yes.
What is the full meaning of SD RAM? SD RAM.
What is the full name?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Can I really remember? Because NV is non-volatile RAM. What is?
Yes.
Yes? Someone? Uh-huh. I can't really remember.
What is confusing me
Uh-huh.
is the letter S, but D I know because D is dynamic, but S I don't know whether it is static dynamic or what. Solid dynamic RAM or what?
Synchronous.
Synchronous dynamic RAM.
Synchronous dynamic RAM, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I think it could be that. Okay, thanks. But
Oh,
I'll do research on it.
Yeah, please. And we gave someone an assignment. They were to tell us about the GPON. Who was it? Someone was to research and tell us more about the GPON.
Yeah, I was to do that.
Uh-huh.
I'm still doing the research, then I'll be able to tell you once I get the full information.
Okay, just find a video, a YouTube video that you can share with us.
Okay.
That will just give us the introduction to GPON. Eh?
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. So synchronous dynamic RAM. Okay. So then we have the fix disk command. So whenever your storage device is using a file system that your operating system is failing to understand, you can always use the fix disk command to be able to sort out such kind of errors. And in the notes, they say that when the terminal device displays the error that the system has failed, you should use this fix disk command to attempt to fix the abnormal file system in that storage device. So for example, you've plugged in a flash disk and you get that error that the system has failed. Just try using the fix disk command, and it can try to change that file system to a file system that it understands. Okay, so that is it about this particular chapter. Maybe now we can have a volunteer taking us through the first question and another one to take us through the next. Anyone? Okay, so let me choose Benson for the first one. Oyo, did you just raise up your hand? So Benson, help us with the first one, then Moroa can help us with the next one. Go ahead.
Okay, the question is, what does the D in the DRWX attribute of the file system represent? So it does represent directory, I guess.
Yes, your guess is correct. Thank you very much. The next one, Moroa.
How can a configuration file stored within the file system of a device be implemented for use by the device?
Mm-hmm. So which command do we use for that?
Maybe someone else can assist.
Okay. I know this one might not be very easy to remember, but it is here.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, someone is saying something.
Can I give it a try?
Yes.
I thought you said that. Hello.
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
Can you go back to the question? Then I can see it.
Yes.
Okay. How can a configuration stored within the file system of a device be implemented for use by the device? Because from there we had two rules: the load and the save. So we can use the save.
Configuration file stored within the file system of a device be implemented for use by the device. Implemented for use. So
We can use the startup saved configuration.
exactly. So if you want to implement, the next startup configuration file, we use the startup saved configuration command. Then the location and the name of the configuration file that we want to be implemented for use by the router in the next startup.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That is it.